Mm, mm, mm. Okay, yes, sir. We're going live now. Thank you again, Brother Lakeem.
Thank you.
Okay, boom. And perfect. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have an incredible guest with us today, Brother Lakeem Muhammad, who's going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration. First of all, assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
This means a great deal to myself, my family, and the viewing audience of the People's Podcast. The first question that we want to know for you, sir, is when did you first hear the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Okay. When I first heard, this is about 1987, 1988 or so. So I must have been around 9 or 10. And at the time, the language and the teachings was all into hip hop. And anybody over a certain age just knows that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and all those sensibilities was growing at the same time hip hop was growing. So I was always musically inclined. And so listening to hip hop was just kind of a natural extension, being young and you're into what's new and what's around. And so Public Enemy, maybe it was Public Enemy, was like the first time that I heard, it's probably Brother Khaled, because he's on the intro of a song called Night of the Living Bassheads. So that was the first time I heard you get that kind of, what's this, right? And of course that record has, Sister Ava is on different snippets of the record. And of course, there's another song that sampled the Minister Jack the Rapper, right? And so that's just a part of the music. And growing up kind of into hip hop, those sensibilities were always just kind of there, but I was still very young. So at the age of 10, I started buying the Final Call. I would see, brothers on the corner, those in Columbus, Ohio, know there's a particular corner, Livingston and Miller. And the FOI would be out there and I would always, my little allowance money, I'd have the dollar ready and, would just make the exchange. And kind of looking back on it, I can kind of think what was going through the mind of a particular brother that's like, this is 10-year-old, just coming to get the paper every time, So that was the first time I heard the teaching and just had initial exposure to it specifically.
Wonderful. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. And Sister Robin in the comments says, Assalamu alaikum, family. Walaikum salam, ma'am. And thank everyone who continues to like, share, and subscribe to the People's Podcast. My next question for you, sir, is, okay, so you're 10 years old, you introduced to hip hop, and you're in Columbus, Ohio.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So you're familiar with Skyline Chili, Cedar Point, and things like that.
Cedar Point, yes, sir.
Kings Island.
Roller coaster.
Yep. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I was born in Cincinnati, so I know about it. Okay. Yes, sir. So once you got of age, what was it that made you accept the teachings?
Wow, so about 16. So at that time, in the 90s, it's a hard thing to kind of convey because, of course, there was no social media, at that time. I mean, a lot of us didn't even have computers. And if you did, there was no internet. So there were some things that were just kind of in the air by way of the culture. I mean, it just was. But before I could accept, this is kind of rewind a little bit. I came to the mosque. The first time I came to the mosque was in 92. So I must have been 14 or so. And even though I lived in Columbus, the first time I went to the mosque was actually in ATL. This is back when the mosque was on Ashby. And my father lived in ATL and I lived in Columbus, Ohio. And I would come and visit. And that just became it was a thing. I get to go to the mosque, right? I'm gonna go visit my pops, but I also get to visit the mosque. And so there was always this kind of, it was something I looked forward to, even though I was still young, right? When I was in high school, and I remember the day clearly, I was sitting in class, it was an English class, and there was an urge that said, go get Message to the Black Man, just like that. That was the urge. Didn't say where, didn't like nothing. It was just like, go message to the black man, go get it. For whatever reason, I didn't think to order it from the paper. I just was like searching bookstores and going around town to the black bookstore. They didn't have it. Going to like the major at the time, there was a place called Media Play. They didn't have it. I remember this white guy kind of looking, he was like, yeah, he knew the book, but he was like, yeah, I think, they published their own material, right? And doing all of this, my brain is on record because there are all these interactions, Afrocentric, there was some Afrocentric movements at the time. And I'm asking them, like, well, where can I get message to the black man? And later I would kind of reflect that nobody actually directed me to the mosque in Columbus, right? Now I later would know that, people knew the minister there, Brother Minister Donnell, people from Columbus, they know the minister, but nobody directed me there. There was always this go elsewhere, go here, go there. And I always just kind of make mental notes of that. So when I was in high school, that was the first thing I read. And it was probably like a 6-month period where, I'm reading the book and I'm kind of going through it, but I still hadn't gone to the mosque in Ohio yet. And it wasn't until, so this is like 94, 95 or so. It wasn't until after the Million Man March that it was like, okay, go to the mosque, right? But I still didn't go to the mosque like locally just yet. At that time, Brother Jabril was going around the country and was speaking, obviously, Sunday lectures, but there was also a seminar that he was doing. So when I decided like, okay, I'm gonna start going to the mosque, I'm gonna start, I got a double dose of Brother Jabril, once in Atlanta and then again in Columbus. And that's when it was like, okay, now you gotta go to the class, right? And so that kind of started the journey. And this gets into 90, was after the Million Man March, so early part of 96. It happened really quickly. It was, I started processing, and I remember going to Savior's Day. So it's 96, this is after the minister leaves and comes back. And the sensation of Savior's Day, like I remembered, because it was a Saturday, it was at the amphitheater, and the vending and everything just was like, this is home. I can't explain it any other way than that. It was just that I hadn't recited yet. I was still processing, but it was just like, this is just home. This is just what it is. So when I came back, we came, after Savior's Day, shortly after, I recited, made it official. It was Eric X at the time, and my ex. And of course, the following year at the amphitheater, received Muhammad. And so, yeah, that was kind of my early, journey in Islam.
Praise be to Allah. Beautiful, beautiful. Sister Robin says 14 in the 90s, question mark. Wait, man, I don't think she thinks you look too young to be 14 in the 90s. Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Okay, for you, how did your family and friends feel once you accepted the teachings?
They were okay with it. I'll tell you. So for example, when I was, as I mentioned, I started reading the newspaper very young, right? I'm reading the Final Call and of course the How to Eat to Live section. And 91, I think, there was a record called Beef. KRS-One has this record called Beef. And he shouts out the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's book, right? Read the book, How to Eat to Live by Elijah Muhammad. It's a brown paperback for anybody, either white or black. And so again, it's kind of in my mind and in the culture. I decided then I'm gonna be a vegetarian, like, just like that. And it was just reading again, I didn't have the How to Eat to Live books yet, but just reading the articles. I'm gonna be a vegetarian. My mom's told me, fine, but if you get sick, you eat meat. I haven't eaten meat since. And so that kind of, because of course, parents, they want to know that whatever you're into is you're going to be okay. What is your mind? What are you giving your mind over to? But they saw just kind of how I was. I mean, I was always into music. I was always there's always this kind of balance or struggle between the analytical side of me, always asking questions, and then the artistic side of me, right? So the artistic side comes out through hip hop, and at the time, hip hop, and before then, even was into rock and some other things. But I don't know how we kind of got off into that, but the support was always kind of there, and people just sort of said, well, we can see that he takes it seriously. Because in the 90s, like I said, it was just part of the culture. It was a common theme to see somebody who's a part of hip hop, whatever they were into, don the FOI uniform, right? Or to go to the mosque or give references or even send people to the mosque. Like, yo, you should go to the mosque, which is, it's just part of the culture. So in that sense, it wasn't really strange as such. I don't think it really became a thing until the culture at large began to change and shift about 98 or so. That's when you start seeing a decline in the references to Islam and hip hop. And then there's some other kind of cultural things kind of going on. But my family is always, they've been supportive. And every now and again you get kind of questions because on one side of my family is heavy 7-Day Adventist. And, I had an uncle who has a church and whatnot. And, 7-Day Adventist, it's all L&G white. That's just what it is. So every now and again, you get kind of I won't say competitions, but they would see similarities and kind of anchor it back to L&G White. And of course, I would just bring it back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but never really be kind of confrontational. It just was, this is what I'm really, really into.
Okay, great. Yes, sir. And what was it like to be around Minister Jabril and hear him teach?
Oh man, Brother Jabril, and even to this day is a really big influence on how I study, how I approach the teaching, the importance of quality and depth, being thorough. And again, this is sort of, I want to keep flashing back to the 90s, but because there's so many cultural differences, like now, we can pull up something on an MP3 player and it's a single file. Back at that time, you had cassette tapes. And Brother Jabril, there'd be 10-hour seminars, right? And so you'd have the cassette tapes in like a rubber band, and you'd have like 3 and 4 sets of them, and you have to make sure you keep them in order and, just kind of going through that material. And then to see and be a part of it was, man, I mean, I'm just thinking about it now, like to be in that environment, being online is definitely a blessing in many respects, but there's something to be said for being in the same physical space with that level of interaction, right? So, because Brother Jabril would give seminars where he would pass out things and we would just read it, right? Sometimes on the tape, sometimes off the tape, read it again, read it again. You learn the value of, no matter what your position is on a subject, be thoroughly intimate with why your position is what it is. Brother Jabril, he would ask you a question that might appear to be a yes or no question. Then you get hit with the follow-up. If so, yes. If not, why not? And so all of this, and this actually would help me later kind of appreciate, engineering, and help me greatly kind of on that path, because this is all still kind of formative. How am I thinking and approaching things, and how to pay attention to subtlety and nuance, right? Brother Jabril would say, I spent the last 4 articles defending the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the domestic life or something. And then you go read the article and you say, well, wait, I'm reading what's here. This is the defense. And it forces you, since brother's telling you what the article is about, the point, the purpose, the motive, and then you read what's there, and it really makes you kind of dig in and say, okay, wait, am I looking at this deeply enough? Am I looking at, how am I interacting with this? When I hear defense of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what level am I thinking on? And of course, in this way, we kind of anchor back into our own talents, right? You know, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And really getting us to kind of see the gift and talents that we have just kind of sitting amongst us. And that's been like really, really heavy, influential on my thinking and my journey as well in Islam.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Okay. And what was it about, you know, that early, you said it helped you in your engineering. Let's talk about your engineering. How did you get into it, and how was that coming?
Almost by accident. I didn't, so in 2008, there was an economic collapse, right? And at the time, you know, I was doing like in-home service work, installing security systems and things like that. And so I was traveling around, activity up and down, just because of travel and balance. And that's a whole kind of period in my life as well. But I decided at a certain point, okay, I'm retiring from the guy with the tool belt, right? There's something else. And so I went back to school. Well, I was already planning to go back to school. Was in Georgia, moved back to Ohio to go to Ohio State. And at the time, it was actually, I was focusing on video editing. Because again, one of the things I was struggling with, I didn't know I was going to be an engineer at the time, but I was still trying to balance the creative part of me and the analytical part of me. And I mean, I genuinely didn't know. It was like, what do I do? Right? You love to teach and you love to minister, but what specifically do I do? What do I want to do to help my nation? At the same time, I got to navigate kind of what's going on in the world. And video editing was something I kind of got into. A friend of mine who passed away a number of years ago, Chris Askew, and he was at the time working at CNN and kind of, you know, was showing me around there and the things that he was doing and giving me some possibilities of things that I could do. And so I moved back to Ohio, and I initially was doing communications to kind of get into video editing. And I was like, okay, well, this is, you know, it's still creative, the art of storytelling, you know, MC, it's not a big transition going from music and being a rapper MC and then telling stories through film, but it still wasn't a full connection. While I was in school, I was, you know, doing some math to kind of get up to speed since it's been so long since I've been out of school. And I was just breezing through those courses, A, and it was like not with any effort. And I look back and it was like, I was like a C student at the time, just from lack of engagement, you know, what we go through. But I kind of liked it. And I was just taking math courses after math courses after math courses, another math course, another math course, another, okay, Calc 1, Calc 2, Calc 3, it just kept going. And I started getting into physics. And I'm seeing Islam all over the place. And, you know, a brother Darren, he said it this way. He said, when you go into the universities with this teaching, you go in with a different kind of bravado. And not so much that you know everything, but you begin to look at things in terms of tools. And I kind of noticed that, like, well, wait a minute. I started getting into, you know, video editing kind of formally, like what I was studying, but I also started paying attention to the economy. I don't know why. I just was like interested in what's going on, maybe because of housing collapse, and you just start asking questions like, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? And so I started paying attention to that and more worldly events. But just out of wanting to keep taking math courses and being in that environment, I changed from video editing into engineering, well, physics and then engineering. And it was like fish the water, because for the kind of engineering that I was into, signal processing, you can teach signal processing just being in a studio environment, right? And many of us, we have that. That's kind of how we're exposed if you're an artist, right? You learn about compression, reverb, now you are approaching it with a creative mind, but now you get to kind of learn the math behind it, right? Different kind of mics and the different kind of, all the things that from a creative perspective, you really, really get into that most people are like, whatever, man, it sounds good to me, And so that just kind of, fascinated me, but I still didn't know, what do I do? Like, how do okay, I'm gonna be an engineer, I guess, but what does that really mean? And what can I do with that? That was kind of how I got into engineering.
Man, that's amazing. Yes, sir. Both of my sisters sends the greetings to you. And Brother Chris asked you, I'm familiar with him. I knew him.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So, man, please. Yes, sir. I didn't know you knew him. So you were down here the same time. Apparently, I was in Atlanta, I'm assuming, and we never met.
Just hopscotch. I'd come out, because of the work I was doing, there's just a lot of travel. So I had like my schedule was anything but regular 9 to 5. And that was actually a part of a big, trial/struggle, because while I'm trying to figure out what to do, the kind of activity, I don't know if I'm gonna be in Ackworth, Georgia at what time, or I'm gonna be all the way down in McDonough. I got a job assignment. I gotta go all the way up to LSJ. And so, and that was just kind of the rhythm, and so that was just something that I struggled with for a long while. Chris Askew, we actually met. It was so random. Well, it's nothing is random, laws and everything. I used to call this show. He had a morning show, and I called in, and I don't remember what the topic was, but he picked up the phone, and he was like, it was kind of like a kindred spirit, right? He's in the Tribe Called Quest, and kind of what we listen to, and he said, you busy, come check me out. He was hosting what he called like family gatherings at Pascal's, the old Pascal's.
Mm-hmm.
So we met up, and on the spot, we just kind of clicked. He's like, well, I'm headed to the station. You want to, come tag along. Let's go to the station. And he gave like an ad hoc interview. Knew nothing about the interview, the host, nothing. It just was like, okay, who are you? What you doing? This. And then when the mics opened up, he was on. And that itself was kind of, it was something to see, because he was definitely into the craft of interviewing and just asking questions and how to draw things out of people. And, he introduced me to a number of other individuals and different experiences. Ghana Expo 2004, I think it was, we worked on together. That's where I met Sister Connie and Brother Steve.
Okay.
At that time I had dreadlocks, and it was crazy. Following year there was Ghana Expo first, and then Africa Expo. And so these are just some of the experiences I'm kind of picking up along the way while I'm still trying to figure out, what do I do, right? You work and you grind, and you love the teaching, you love our nation, but you're still trying to figure out, like, okay, I'm not called into the ministry like that. I have these gifts and talents, but what do you do? Yeah, that's how I met Chris.
Man, that's amazing. Okay, yes, sir. But you didn't answer my question, so we never met, though, me and you.
No, we never met. We never met.
Yes, sir. Okay, wonderful. All right, I want to thank everybody who continues to watch. We have a few more questions for our great guest, Brother Lakeem Muhammad, but I have a quick 60-second commercial break for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. Hold on one second. Here we go. And because we want to come back to our brother and absolutely ask him for some advice for students and for those who want to go into that field. 1 second. Here we go. Of course. All right, 1 second. Here we go. Oh, shit. All right, here we go. All right, thank you very much. Thank everybody who continues to watch. Rashad Street Premier Media Production. He has a 4K camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Also, my sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me children's book and coloring book, both of which are available on Amazon. Please go get both of those. My sister Naima, Stay On Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country and right here in the studio in Atlanta, Georgia. We love our tiny dancers. Sister Rashida with Rock Communications. What she offers is copy editing, project management, content development, and media relations. If you're working on a book, please reach out to her, Sister Rock Communications. Student Minister Robert L. Muhammad of the Southwest region out of Austin, Texas, squashing the beef in the community. He does a phenomenal job. Thank you and let's make sure we continue to support him. His wife, Children of the Most High, giving birth to a God in the science of child rearing, Sister Fudia Muhammad. Please make sure we support our sister. Sister Sherry Muhammad, AsiaticMinds.com is a virtual school that teaches STEM to young kings and queens virtually all across the country. Let's make sure we continue to support AsiaticMinds.com. Fashion Gods, urban streetwear, clothing for men and boys, 314-329-6009. Let's make sure we get support Fashion Gods. Also, the Power Campus online learning. Do you want to improve your homeschooling experience? We're here to help. Contact us at 847-0786, readforpower.com. Let's make sure we support everyone who is homeschooling during this time. Let's make sure we support Dr. Henry M. Carter, King Henry's Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad, COVID-19 Disinfecting Cleaning Services out of Chicago. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com, and his other book, Down Is Not Out, both of which are available on AbdulSharif.com. And last but not least, my two books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book, and No Father, No Excuse, both of which are available on Amazon. Thank you all very much for every sponsor, every donor. It means a lot to us. Right back to our brother Lakeem. All right, here we go. Boom. My next question for you, sir, is what advice would you give to those who want to get into engineering?
One is that prepare for difficulty, but the difficulty may not be what you expect. One thing about engineering is that, and this is, I think, true of STEM fields in general, there's a lot of pressure, artificially induced pressure in the way it's presented. And some of that is intentional. The legendary weed out courses, right? But there's a value in that. And one of the ways and one of the things that can help you, obviously prayer is one on that path and on that journey, but also valuing some of the struggle and valuing some of the process as well. One thing about engineering, and this is kind of anchored back into Brother Jabril, and what really helped me was, being thorough has its reward, but the process of learning how to be thorough is itself something of a struggle. The beauty of mathematics, a lot of times, you'll hear mathematicians, even physicists, talk about a beauty and an elegance in mathematics, but the thing that gives it its beauty is also what can make it very frustrating at times, because the math doesn't argue with you, it just hands you your result. And you can get mad, and people do. And there's certainly days where you just shake your head like, oh no, like this is legit. Like, what am I doing? I remember this is a weird kind of last memory of my undergraduate days. The last question of the last exam, I just put the answer, I don't know. I just was out. I couldn't, and it wasn't like kind of giving up. We were, I understood that I was going to make it through. And I told myself, whatever I do is going to be on top of an engineering degree. And if I'm selling drumsticks at the drum store, it's going to be on top of an engineering degree. I just set my resolve to that. And as a footnote, one of the go-to lectures the minister did called I Accept the Challenge.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That is just, the minister's never given a bad lecture, but there's some depending on your experience and kind of what you're going through that you can just pull on and feed on. And that's definitely one where you set your resolve and then you trust in the law, right? You know, your motivation is pure, your motivation is clear. And so when you go into it, that just says, okay, I'm going to get through this regardless as to what pressure there may be. You know, Allah will see me through this. And then on the other end of that, as the minister said years ago, you know, he wanted us to develop an insatiable appetite for knowledge. And it was a curiosity. So even if it's something that you're not necessarily interested in, you know, one of the struggles once you're in university is, why do I have to take this course? This has nothing to do with what I'm interested in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It might even be just straight up stupid, right? And you know, you kind of see some of the material like, oh, okay, here they go. They trying to work my mind, you know. But again, with this teaching, as you go in, you understand that and can filter it out. We have a foundation to begin to filter that out. But developing a curiosity and saying, okay, and this again, you know, goes back to those formative years, like why? Well, why? You know, well, what's the value in that? You know, even if it's something I disagree with, I want to know, what is your thinking? How did you come to that conclusion? How did you come to see it that way? And even if it's something that I'm straight up in opposition to by way of being a Muslim, you can begin to understand, you know, what Brother Jabril used to call upside down mathematics, right? Is a way of thinking and reasoning about the world that's completely distorted. And so you'll go through courses that have a bit of that. And then you'll go through courses that is kind of through the fire. And with engineering, it's difficult to contextualize because engineering is a do it kind of field, right? There's a lot of theory that you have to learn and that gives you more to draw from when you really start solving problems. But once you begin to see the context for, okay, why is this useful, right? And it's very difficult to get in a formal setting, but the curiosity will kind of, you know, get you through it. So that's definitely one thing I would kind of offer. But college is kind of a whole conversation into itself. You know, there's so much they don't give you, you know. So here's another thing. Engineering, they actually present you top to bottom with everything you'll need at the beginning stages of every level of your career. They don't tell you that, and you don't necessarily see it that way. But even if you are going into an advanced position, there's a lot that you get even at the undergraduate level that you can use and anchor and use to your benefit to begin problem solving. Because that's really what engineering is about. It's just problem solving. And there are ways of dealing with more and more complex problems, more and more complex, you know, solutions that are required in order to solve problems given whatever kind of trade-offs, whatever kind of constraints you have. So that's really the everything in a nutshell. But in order to effectively solve problems or offer a superior solution to problems, you need to know something, and we need to know something about the world. We need to know something about the physical world as it relates to this issue, that issue. And so all of these things kind of just in the back of your mind as you're fighting with why I need to know discrete mathematics and who cares about Laplace transformations. You know, there is an end goal and a value to learning it that also has tremendous effects on this teaching and growth in this teaching as well.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And everyone's showing so much love in the comments. I can't wait to put this on YouTube to see your brother Lakeem Muhammad, the computer engineer. My next question. Oh, you spoke of music earlier.
Yes.
What is your favorite album of all time?
Oh, brother, that is an impossible question to answer.
Yeah.
So another one that had the early impact And for believers above a certain age, you'll get that Public Enemy, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Because I mean, that record, you know, even with the teachings being all through it, but also in terms of the hip hop culture, what that record meant to the culture at the time. I mean, there's just no comparison to it. So that's close. But if I had to pick one, it's probably going to be Midnight Marauders, Tribe Called Quest. And that's 94 was just a special year in hip hop. I mean, the production, the samples, the vibe and the energy of the music. There was a sort of progression of Tribe from the first record to, you know, People's Instinctive to Low End Theory to, and then Midnight Marauders. The album cover had everybody's, like the headshots of everybody all across hip hop. And it really just captured like, yeah, Tribe is that group that no matter what you were into, it was still Tribe, right? So the cover has Too Short on it, but then you have the hieroglyphics, right? You know, and it really just kind of was a good snapshot. And it was one of the first, well, I don't want to say that, but that's a record I could listen to from top to bottom to top to bottom to top to bottom again.
Okay, perfect. Yes, sir. Okay, shout out to Tribe Called Quest and man, Public Enemy. So you gave us two amazing albums to, that are classics, absolutely, for sure. Where can people reach out to you on social media who may want to communicate with you for some mentorship or learning some advice on, you know, computer engineering?
Well, there's two places. I'm on social media through, it's actually through a project I have I have a company called Fajan Limited. And one of the things that we do is there's a publication called The Econ Dev, and you can find me at theecondev.com. And I'm on Twitter at _the Econ Dev. And what that is kind of in short is it deals with obviously engineering, but there's kind of a broader sense of nation development that I'm also getting into as well. Engineering being, of course, one component of developing our nation and developing the capacity in our nation. So that's definitely one place you can reach me at, or you can reach me directly at Lakeem.Muhammad at Fajan Limited. That's FAZHAM. I'm sorry, AN as in Nancy, LTD.com. And of course, we can, you know, schedule and kind of go through some advice or mentoring. Inshallah, in 2022, I've been kind of scaffolding some internships and mentorships programs. One of the things with the pandemic is there's been a lot of kind of breakthroughs and advancements is just the normalcy of interacting, like on Zoom and other kind of interactive tools. In the olden days of engineering, it would just be like shadowing, but I'm also exploring some ways of doing virtual shadowing, as it were, based around real experience. Because as I said before, one of the challenges with engineering is getting that contextualized experience to how do I solve problems, right? When I sit down to write code, what am I doing? How do I identify where issues are and how do I solve them? And, you know, there's a whole world of architecture, and I want to kind of demystify that process as well, because there's certainly a huge interest in engineering, you know, within our nation.
Okay, great. Praise be to Allah. Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank you very much, Brother King, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the People's Podcast. I want to thank everybody who watches, and I hope that we continue to connect different engineers, mathematicians, everybody, all of the educators across the nation and across the country and across the world. Thank you very much for coming on the People's Podcast. It's been an honor. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.